We are here to find out more about the Argyll Aspires project and where it came from. So Charts has been delivering heritage-focused projects for a while now, and Argyll Aspires was looking to build on that legacy, giving the opportunity for individual young people to have apprenticeships or traineeships within heritage venues in Argyll. And also expanding the opportunities for young people at high school to connect with their local heritage. So we have had a traineeship at the Argyll Papers, who is Donald MacDougall, who is here and is going to talk in a little bit. We've also got Shannen, who has been based at Dunollie Castle. And earlier in 2023, we delivered a project with Rothesay High School and Mount Stewart all around the Argyll collection, which, if you don't know, you should Google, a collection of fantastic artwork, paintings, sculptures that was collected by Argyll and Bute Council and hangs in schools and has maybe been a little bit neglected over the years, but Charts has really taken the initiative in celebrating and protecting that collection so that the people of Argyll can enjoy what an amazing resource it is. So that project worked with a small group from Rothesay High who curated an exhibition that was on in Mount Stewart when it was incredibly sunny and balmy and not at all like the weather we're currently having. So those young people got experience of how to select the different artworks and put on a whole exhibition. But tonight we're going to hear more about the apprenticeships and traineeships. And we also, a different project that has evolved alongside the Argyll Aspires project is that with Campbeltown Museum. And we have Khara MacPhail here tonight, who is also going to talk about her apprenticeship. So there's been a real commitment from Charts to create early introductions and work experiences for Argyll's young people to progress working in the heritage sector. Creating opportunities that absolutely just wouldn't have been there before. As I mentioned, I've had the pleasure of doing some project management. I was actually brought into the project as an external evaluator. So I was speaking to the young people at the beginning of their experiences. I say young people, you're all professionals, but you're younger than me. But then when the amazing project manager, Claire, moved on to a museum in Glasgow, I stepped in and I've been able to work a little bit more closely with these fantastic humans. And I hope tonight you'll be able to see just how brilliant they are and what an amazing job they're doing in contributing towards the protection, conservation, celebration and access to heritage in Argyll and Bute. I think the future is in very safe hands with these guys, the future of heritage. So the project, the Argyll Aspires project, has been funded and made possible by the National Lottery Heritage Fund. Thank you very much to them. And Charts obviously gets significant support from Argyll and Bute Council. The Dunollie Castle Apprenticeship has been supported through Museums Galleries Scotland, who supported Shannen through her qualification element of that. The Argyll Papers traineeship has been working with the University of Dundee, and Donald will talk a little bit more about that in a bit. And then Campbeltown Museum, in partnership with Live Argyll, Khara also did a qualification supported by Museums Galleries Scotland. And I'm just making sure that I mention everybody that should be mentioned. We also, and I think Lily has just joined us. Lily's another trainee who's only just started. I certainly wasn't going to put her in the position of doing a presentation tonight because she's only a couple of weeks into her project. But as part of Reconnected, which is Charts' project furthering that work I talked about a little bit earlier there about the Argyll collection, supported by the Arts Fund and Dunollie Borough Hall, Lily is pulling together an amazing exhibition that will be on around Easter time. And she is being supported through Rewards Training Scotland with her qualification and her modules. And we also managed to squeeze in a little additional thing that we had some school visits to various heritage sites. And that was also supported by the Ganachie Trust. So Kathleen, who's here tonight, the director of Charts, is an absolute wizard at pulling together little bits of money from here and there to make really quite remarkable things happen with a really small team. So that's something to fully celebrate. The hope was always that jobs would come from these apprenticeships and traineeships. And I am absolutely delighted to tell you that that's happened. So Donald, after his traineeship finished in November, he is now the Archive and Land Management Assistant at the Argyll Papers. And Khara, who has been in the role for quite a while now, is the Heritage Learning and Access Assistant at Campbeltown Museum. And she's actually employed by Charts via a project partnership agreement between Charts and Live Argyll. And Shannen, who unfortunately can't be with us tonight. She is really under the weather with the flu, but she's pre-recorded a presentation for us to enjoy. Shannen, just this month, became the Collections Development Officer at Dunollie Castle. So all of these young people have ended up securing employment through those opportunities. But there's also been a lot of unexpected benefits as well. I think some of those will be covered through the presentations you're going to hear. But for example, there was a recent case study in the Scottish Collections and Archives annual review starring Donald. And from one of those school trips, a school trip went to the Argyll Papers, and now one of those young people, jumps on the bus from Tarbert to Inveraray and volunteers at the Papers, which is just a lovely story. And there's so many little stories like that of things that have happened that were the kind of unexpected benefits of when you bring young people into, and yes, I use young people in the broadest sense, bring young professionals into different heritage venues, like really some amazing things happen. So we're going to hear from Donald first, and then we're going to hand over to Khara to find out. So we're hearing about archives first, and then we're moving into the museums world. And then we'll have listen to Shannen's presentation about life in a castle. And then there'll be a chance for questions after each one, if you've got direct questions that you want to ask each person. But we'll also, at the end, for a few hello Jill, I'm just going to pop you on mute. There you go, you've done it yourself. We'll also have a round table at the end, and I've got 3 prompts for you, quite broad questions about giving opportunities for young heritage professionals, what we could be doing, what could heritage venues be doing and project partners be doing more of, what questions you broader questions you might have for Donald and Khara, and also obviously for Kathleen at Charts. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Donald, and yeah, you can take it away with your archive chat.
Okay. Now, can everyone see that all right? Brilliant. So thanks very much indeed for that, Sarah. That was a great introduction. A big hello to everyone online. It's really nice to see some familiar faces and names in the room. So thanks very much for coming along. And I've decided to call this little talk Opening the Gate to a Career in Archives, because I think that for a lot of people, the archive world is pretty mysterious. On the one hand, not many people know perhaps what an archive is, what an archivist does. And on the other, I think for people looking to get into the profession, it can be quite a challenge. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about my own journey with the Argyll papers in Inveraray Castle. And I first became interested in archives actually through Dunollie Castle when I was working there. I started in a part-time position while I was still at university. And after I graduated, I actually continued working there for a few years. And it was at that time I got very much involved in the archive that they have there. It's a very small private collection and usually closed to researchers, but it was a small volunteer group that I became involved with. And I quickly became totally captivated by the process and the work involved in caring for an archival collection. I really enjoyed describing the documents that were there. And I also quite like the practical side of things as well, tying up bundles with cotton tape and placing things neatly in boxes and all that side of things. So it really captured my imagination, and it led me to consider a career in archives as being a possibility after I graduated. So I studied history, and it kind of felt like a kind of natural choice. But I did discover that this was kind of easier thought about than actually done, particularly as I wanted to stay in Argyll after I graduated. I made that choice fairly early on. I actually live on the island of Seal, and the family have a croft there. So the roots go back quite a long way. And I know that in the past few centuries, it's been the fashion, or the trend, I should say, for younger people to move away from this part of the world. And I really didn't want to do that. I want to stay here and make a go of it if I could. So that was always the dream. As I say, quite difficult to realise. But in the summer of 2022, I learnt about the Argyll Aspires project. And reading the job description of that, it felt like it was almost tailor-made for me. I couldn't believe the scope of the project and the ambition, allowing people to earn while they learnt, and just the sheer range of things that the traineeship would do, and put me in a solid kind of foundation for a future career as an archivist. So I was absolutely thrilled when I got the position, got the traineeship. And so I'm going to talk to you about what I've achieved since I started. So I'm going to give you some behind the scenes insights into the Argyll papers at Inveraray Castle. And towards the end of the presentation, I'm going to chat a wee bit about some personal highlights, if there's time for that as well, and some opportunities that I wouldn't have had otherwise if it wasn't for Argyll Aspires. So, okay. So as Sarah mentioned in her introduction, the postgraduate certificate in archival studies with the University of Dundee was an absolutely core part of the traineeship. It occupied a great deal of my time from September 2022 to November last year. And it was a great experience. Distance learning, as the course was done through, was something completely new to me. But it meant that I was able to study remotely on days that I wasn't working in the archive. So I had 3 days in the archive, and I optimistically allocated myself another 2 days from which to do the studying. That was a Monday and Friday. And I have to confess that I did eat into quite a few weekends by the time that assignments came around. But you can see on the slide there are the 3 modules that I took. So there's a kind of mixture of basic archive theory, what is an archive, what is an archivist, why do we do what we do, and then towards the end of the certificate course, we're moving into the more obscure, the more cutting edge So you can see cataloguing in the digital age there. It was the last module that I took. So they were all very, very demanding. I have to say, postgraduate level is definitely a step up from the undergrad. But the modules themselves, they were designed to complement the practical tasks that were carried out in the archive as well. So it wasn't just purely writing essays and reports. There was a lot of practical stuff going on as well, which is great. And my fellow students came from a range of different archives, always quite a small group. There was never more than 12 of us, I think, on any one module. But the quality was certainly there. So there was folk from the Bank of England archive, Lambeth Palace archive, George Heriot's School, Highland Council archive up in Inverness, and also the Conservative Party archive at Oxford University. So a real interesting range of people to learn from and interact with as part of the course. And I'm delighted to say, and a little bit relieved as well, that I graduated with merit from my course in November last year. So that's the kind of start of my education in archives is complete. There's still a long way to go, but the first rung of the ladder has been reached, which I'm really pleased about. So moving on to the main aspect of the traineeship, which was being based at the Argyll papers themselves. So the Argyll papers, very briefly, are the family and estate archive of the Duke of Argyll, held in secure storage at Cherry Park. Now, Cherry Park is the site of what we call the Court of Offices. So it's the stable block / farmyard of Inveraray Castle. And it's a fantastic John Adam designed 18th century building. And so the archive storerooms are actually based in there and not the castle, as you might think. So just to clear up any confusion round about that. The archive itself dates from the 13th century and it extends to approximately half a linear kilometre of bound volumes, loose papers, parchment, photographs, and also maps and plans, amongst many, many other things as well. That's just a very brief summary, but it is a huge, huge collection. And it's been described, as you can see there on the slide, by Professor Alan McInnes as one of the most important private archives in Britain. And that is absolutely the case. I think it's probably justified because the Earls and later the Dukes of Argyll really did hold some incredibly important positions in the Scottish and later the British state. They were right up there always with the chief subjects of the kingdom. And also attached with that, they held vast amounts of land. So both these aspects are reflected in the content of the archive. And that's why a man of Professor McInnes's calibre can say that it really is one of the most important in Britain. So for me, the best definition of an archive is that it's a collective memory for society. So if we as individuals lose our memories, then we can't function because we have no record of our past decisions and we can't use evidence of these decisions to shape our future. And the key thing really is that archives have an enduring value to lots of people, and they can be used in many, many different ways. So I'm going to talk now about some examples of the work I've done as archive assistant trainee with the help of the amazing Alison Diamond, who is archivist for Argyll Estates, and the equally brilliant Cherry Park volunteers, and also the wider friends of the Argyll papers who have been just a tremendous support to me over the past year and more. So one thing I've done, quite a lot of actually, is deal with inquiries. And I was looking at some spreadsheets earlier on this week, and after a bit of calculation, I worked out that I've answered over 130 separate inquiries to the archive over the course of my traineeship. It's something that I really, really enjoy. I like the challenge of it, and it's just something that really makes you aware of the collection and the riches you have, because you're looking through it to find answers, basically, for people. So it's a great way to learn what you've got. And in terms of the people that inquire to us, we've got everyone from academics, some really highly respected academics from major institutions, down to PhD students just starting off. And then we've got inquiries from the likes of family historians and just regular folk wanting to know more about their own families. So it's a huge range. And on the slide here, I've got an example of what an academic might be looking for. So this, as you can see from the caption, it's a 16th century precept of Sazine issued by Archibald IV, Earl of Argyll, in favour of Ian MacCool or MacDougall, son and apparent heir of Ian MacCool of Dunollie. So I had to slip that little MacDougall reference in there. I couldn't resist. And that's a close-up of his Archibald IV Earl's seal, which is a wonderful thing there. This is a charter that's in excellent condition. Not all of them look like this, but this is a really nice one I thought I'd show you. So that's something that an academic might look for, is evidence of transfer of land ownership as part of a wider study. And then the family historian might be interested in the likes of these volumes, which are displayed on the slide there as well. So they are all to do with estate management in various forms. We've got rentals, letter books of correspondence, account books, all these kind of things. And these can be really, really useful in highlighting names and places, which is essentially what the family historian and the genealogist is after. So many hours spent looking through these. And I always make a great personal point of trying to find out as much as possible for people, because they're coming to us and they're really keen to find out as much as they can. So it's something I really enjoy doing, is looking through all these records. So that's inquiries. And another aspect of what I've been doing and what I've done is outreach. So I think it's really important to promote the archive. Most archivists would agree that it's absolutely vital for the sustainability of their collections to make people aware of what they've actually got. It kind of goes back to the idea of collective memory. If archives belong to society and they are the memory of society as a whole, then it's up to us as archivists to widen access as much as possible. And in fact, it's one of the key professional duties, really, of an archivist. Number one is making sure the records are safe and preserving them for the future. And number two really is making them available to people to consult. And I know that this is something that His Grace, the Duke of Argyll, and Argyll Estates management in the wider sense is really keen to do, is to widen access to the Argyll papers, because it is such an important collection. It deserves to be seen and enjoyed. So I actually helped to design an exhibition for Inveraray Castle in the winter of 2022-23, working closely with Alison, Kenny White, who is the head guide at Inveraray, and volunteers as well to draw together this exhibition on the policies of Inveraray Castle. So you'll notice I'm using the terms Inveraray and Inveraray interchangeably here. I've been so used to saying Inveraray for so long, but the pronunciation that's most closest to the Gaelic is Inveraray. So I need to keep reminding myself to do that. So the policies is a Scots word really for grounds, ornamental grounds surrounding a big country house. And in the case of Inveraray, the buildings in the grounds are phenomenal. They're often overlooked in favour of the castle itself. But in this exhibition, we want to draw attention to the policies, to some of the wonderful designed landscape buildings in them, and to encourage folk to get out and explore them as well. So that exhibition was on display in the castle from March to October of last year. And I just learned the other day, in fact, that there were over 80,000 visitors to the castle this past season. So you can say that quite a few thousand of those would have actually seen this exhibition, which is something I'm really pleased about. It was a great experience to put together, and it meant that I could look through some of my favourite things in the archive, which are these architectural plans. So the one you're seeing in the slide there is actually an alteration that was never carried out to the ducat or pigeon house that's in the grounds at the castle. So that was built in the mid-1700s, and later on in the century, the 5th Duke of Argyll commissioned the architect Robert Milne to come up with a design to change the ducat into a temple, an ornamental temple. So what he's done is he's added these columns around the outside, but I think that might have spoiled the effect a bit, and I'm glad to say it was never actually carried out. But again, all the evidence for that and what might have been, we have in the archive. Another aspect of outreach that I really enjoy, in fact, is giving tours of the archive. And I really love showing people around the stores, giving them that behind the scenes insight into what happens. I used to do a lot of guided tours when I was working at Dunollie Castle, and I really do think it is the best way of interacting with people and showing them the riches that you have in your particular collection. So the group that's pictured in the slide there is actually the lovely ladies from the Dunoon Inner Wheel who came and visited us last year. So it was great to show them round. So moving on from outreach, I thought I'd highlight some of the work we do with other users of the archive. And you can see on the slide is a picture of our very fancy scanner. So this is something that we use in the archive to digitize a lot of our documents, and it's in use on a daily basis. And it means that we can capture brilliant high quality images of some of our maps and plans, which I've already mentioned are some of my favorite things in the archive. And these images don't just sit about on hard drives or on computers, they are very much in use. And to give you an example, I put here a plan of the Era Bridge, which is still standing today. You'll be very familiar with it if you travel through Inveraray or Inveraray. And it was designed by the architect Robert Milne, who I've already mentioned, in 1773. So it's a brilliant survival, both the plan and the bridge. Although the bridge recently is actually in need of some TLC, particularly after the really severe flooding that we had in October last year. So we actually have had a consultant engineer get in touch with Argyll Estates looking for these original plans of the bridge so that he can consult them and look at the actual engineering in finer detail so that it can inform any repair work that might need to be done on the bridge. So this, I think, is a brilliant example of how archives are actually relevant in today's world. They can be used for all sorts of things and to really help out people, even modern engineers. They're still looking to the work of their forefathers, which is great. So that's a great example. And then another one that I thought might be interested in. I don't know if we have any whiskey aficionados in the room tonight, but I absolutely couldn't resist putting this example in of how archives can be used in another sense. So the Isle of Tiree whiskey, which is due to be released in 2025, will actually use a little piece of the Argyll papers in its packaging. And that's in the form of this brilliant plan of the Isle of Tiree, done by surveyor James Turnbull in 1768, 1769. So the distillery approached us here at the archive and asked if we could grant them permission to use the map in their packaging for the whiskey. And you can see that's represented in the top right of the slide there. So we were very happy to do that. We came to an agreement, and it's very, very fitting because James Turnbull actually mentioned distilling in Tiree in his survey report that accompanied the big plan that he did. He is not too happy about the scale of it. He mentions that it might be perhaps causing the residents to be a bit more idle than they should. But he's broadly supportive of distilling in general, providing it's controlled, because it can bring in a source of income to the island. And that's exactly what's happening now in the 21st century. So it's amazing how these things kind of come around. And as I say, very fitting that we can use Turnbull's plan in the actual packaging of this new whiskey. So incredibly exciting. So I'm conscious I've been talking for quite a long time, so I'm going to just round off with some of my highlights, personal highlights of the traineeship. And for me, really, this centred on visiting places throughout Britain. So I thought initially when I started the traineeship that I would be very much based pretty much all the time in Inveraray, but that absolutely wasn't the case. So you can see from the list of places I've been to, and they're all plotted on the map as well. It's just an incredible range of different sites. And I have to thank Alison yet again for this, because through her amazing contacts, I've become a member of the Scottish Association for Country House Archivists, the Historic Houses Archivist Group, and also the Archives and Records Association. And each of these professional bodies has really opened a number of doors for me and let me go to all these wonderful places. So in particular, a great one was the Archives and Records Association conference in Belfast, which was held at the end of August last year. And you can see from that picture in the kind of centre right there, it was a packed conference. I think there was over 500 delegates involved in the archive world in some way. So it was absolutely fantastic to go there and learn from them, and also learn about the sort of cutting edge issues facing the archive profession. So that was a wonderful experience, all held in the Europa Hotel. And then another one, or another two actually, that I have to mention are visits to Boughton House and also Drayton House in Northamptonshire. And that was part of the Historic House Archivist Group AGM, an annual meet. And that was in September 2023. And curiously, by coincidence, both of those houses that we visited a day after one another, both have featured in blockbuster films of last year. So Boughton was in Napoleon, Ridley Scott's historical epic, and Drayton was in Saltburn, which you might have seen as well. So it's very surreal watching these films on screen and sort of screaming, I've been there, I've been there. It was just brilliant. The most important aspect really of these meets is actually, as I've already said, meeting up with people and learning from them. And I think really this is vital in heritage. to stay connected with one another, just like we're doing tonight. And I'm so pleased that I'll be able to continue doing that in my new role working with Argyll Estates. So thank you very much indeed for listening. It's a bit rambling, quite difficult to cover so much in such a short space of time, but I hope you enjoyed that and you've got a bit of a better insight into what I've achieved during my traineeship. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Donald. Not rambling at all. It was utterly fascinating. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who now wants to spend several days diving into that archive and finding stories and interesting things. Just lovely. And yeah, and I could listen to your explanations of archives and the magic of them and the relevance to the contemporary world all day. So thank you so much. We're now going from archive into museum. And we're going to hand over to Khara, Khara actually pre-recorded this for us earlier today just because she's been to the dentist and she wasn't quite sure, she's here with us. But so she will be available for questions. Oh, but I jumped in there before asking you if there was any questions or any thoughts you'd like to share from Donald's presentation there. If anybody wanted to unmute or ask anything in the chat, or you can save it for the round table at the end if you wanted to.
I'd be interested to ask something, Sarah, if that's okay.
Of course, Janice, over to you.
Right, thank you so much. Donald, that was totally fascinating. And Sarah, you articulated beautifully just like how fascinating it was and how it was just really like it made you want to dive in and be a part of that that world for a little while, and just that satisfaction that you clearly gain from the almost the detective work that you undertake. It's just, it sounds fascinating. I'm intrigued. I'm looking at some I'm looking at various projects across Cowal and Bute. So I'm based in Dunollie at the moment, working with some third sector organisations through the third sector interface down here. And there's a few different projects around heritage and kind of connecting people to local history. And something that I wondered about, Donald, was what interest there is from the kind of immediate local community. So Inveraray Castle and Inveraray in general, it's a fascinating place, but obviously there's that kind of conflict within the history of kind of land ownership and the kind of, I suppose that kind of the controversy that sort of surrounds some of the history around the families that have owned land as such, and the kind of difficulties that can hold for some people, kind of historically speaking. Do you find that is still any kind of sort of barrier to the kind of people's will to kind of learn and understand a bit about where things are at now in terms of the kind of the ongoing kind of interest of just the fact that we all live here, we all lived here together, regardless of what that history holds? Or do you find that we're kind of in a different era now, and people were kind of, do you know what I mean, looking at it a bit differently? So it's not very well articulated by me, but it's really just trying to work out kind of how the very immediate community, I suppose, feel about the archive and what they might want to get from that, or whether they still sort of if you still find there's any kind of barriers to people's desire to kind of access that information, given a bit of kind of conflict in the history for local people. That was all.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. I think on the whole, actually, the local community are incredibly supportive of the archive, and that really comes down to the relationship that's been built up with the castle itself. The castle's been open to the public since the 1950s, so actually quite a number of years. And there has been a really effective relationship that's been built up there. Inveraray is really nothing, I guess you could say, in one sense, without the castle and without Argyll Estates. But also the relationship works both ways. So we are dependent on the local community and their support as well. And I think whenever I've spoken to anyone about the archive that lives round about Inveraray, or even slightly further afield, they are all fascinated to know more about it. In contrast to the castle, I could say the archive has been not as easy to access for one reason or another. It's only in recent years, fairly recent years, that the estate and His Grace as well has made efforts to open it up even more. But I think people are fascinated, and they can leave the past and they can understand that the controversies of the past kind of belong there, and it's all about sharing now what we have. So yeah.
I think
Well,
what you were saying
thank you very much.
Sorry, Janice, carry on.
Well, just to thank you. Your enthusiasm is really clear, and there's. Oh, sorry, Sarah, I don't want to take up much more time on this, but it was just really, it's interesting to know that, and that there's that good relationship that's been built up over a period of time as well. There's some. Obviously, there's some similar things in Cowling and Butte as well. The sort of quite recent kind of difficult history in terms of how the likes of Mount Stewart kind of built some of their wealth on the back of the mining in Wales. So there's kind of some acknowledgement, I think, that's starting to come from that kind of more difficult part of the kind of history. And it's interesting to know that if once these archives start to become more accessible to people, if that, I don't know if it almost becomes part of that connecting process and that kind of that almost that healing and just that kind of ability to feel a bit more ownership over what actually exists locally, and if that helps to get the local communities more interested. So yeah, no, I'm really interested, and I'm grateful for your answer, Donald. Thank you, Sarah.
No worries. And I think that's what you said at the end of your bit there, your presentation, Donald, when you were talking about the conference. It's about that connection and acknowledging the amazing work that Alison Diamond has done on opening up the archive for people. I know she won't want me calling her out and telling her she's wonderful, but I'm doing it anyway. Okay, fantastic. I think we should move on now. So let's, introducing Khara MacPhail's presentation about her work at Campbeltown Museum.
During this presentation, I hope to walk you through my journey over the past year. So my apprenticeship took place at Campbeltown Museum, or the Burnett Building as it's called, in Campbeltown, which is what you're seeing on the screen here. The left-hand image is of the museum space, the central image is the managed room, which we use for the gallery and our events, and the right-hand side images are of the exterior of the building. So the Burnett Building was designed as a free public library museum in 1899, and it was built by the Glasgow architect John James Burnett and funded by a local man called James McAllister Hall. Today it's used for the museum space, and the other half of the building is for council offices and the registrars. So how did I end up at Campbeltown Museum? I left school in 2019 with no idea of what I wanted to do with my life after school. So I applied for university as it was almost expected for us to either apply for further education or to get a job locally. I got into my courses that I applied for, however, realised I was forcing myself to do something that I didn't want to do. So I spent the next year of my life working at my local pool as a lifeguard and decided to volunteer at Campbeltown Museum in 2019. However, the curator left and then COVID hit, so this was cut short. So during COVID, I was on furlough, so I decided to apply for an online course through the UHI, which was Social Sciences HNC, because I'm definitely not the type of person that can sit around doing nothing for too long. In 2021, I applied for a degree in History and Criminology through the UHI because I really enjoyed learning online and I enjoyed the course material so much that I wanted to pursue it in the future. However, I quickly realised that I favoured the history side of my degree so much more than the criminology, which is what pushed me to kind of solely focus on history in 2023. I was asked to explain my history interests tonight, which at the start I didn't really have an answer for, but on some thought I realised it's quite simple. I'm naturally a very curious person, slightly nosy, but I really enjoy researching things and problem solving. So in hindsight, this apprenticeship was perfect for me, as I got to research the objects and discover all their stories. 2022 came around and I selected all my third year modules for university, but due to personal reasons I decided to defer my degree for 1 year, and being perfectly honest, I had no intention of returning to my studies after that year. It was during this time when I saw the apprenticeship advertised on Facebook, and after some serious convincing from friends and family, I applied. So after the application process, I began my apprenticeship in September 2022, and then started with my tutor for Museums Gallery Scotland, Natalie, in November. I finished my qualification in 2023, officially in August, and this experience led me to being offered a position at Campbeltown Museum part-time with charts in Argyll. This really gave me the confidence to return to my studies this year, and gave me a career pathway in mind to keep me motivated for the future. A bonus of this apprenticeship was that I was allowed to research the local collection and discover my past, and this was something I really want to do as we were never taught it in school. I'm currently in my role at Campbeltown Museum and really enjoying it so far. My daily roles are very similar to my apprenticeship in that I'm taking daily environmental checks on the museum objects and planning interesting activities for children and families, as well as interacting with the local community. I'm now in my third year of university and really enjoying it, where I'm virtually studying half the week and then working at Campbeltown Museum the other half of the week. This is a really nice balance, and I'm getting invaluable practical experience in the world of museums, as well as studying the textbook side of history at university. Here's a little slide on how the apprenticeship worked behind the scenes. I'll let you read that for yourself. But I feel very fortunate to have this opportunity to work with charts, as it's led to me meeting so many new people who are knowledgeable in their respective roles and have really helped me throughout the year, as well as getting a behind the scenes preview at the world of museums, which is so much more complicated and busier than I ever imagined it to be. So throughout my year I was allowed to choose 9 modules to study. However, some of my original choices were not doable within the time frame of the apprenticeship. So on the screen here is my final 9 modules that I passed. My main roles within the museum were linked to all these modules. For example, taking daily environmental checkings, like I just mentioned, where I then recorded this data on an Excel spreadsheet to monitor the condition of the objects. I then created visitor feedback surveys for adults and children to find out what the public were enjoying and why, and what they weren't enjoying and why, which helps me when I'm creating events in the future. Some events I ran over the course of the year were treasure hunts, an Easter egg hunt. I provided quizzes for all the holidays, as well as an embroidery workshop, which you can see at the bottom of the screen here, this kind of bottom image. This was created to allow the public to interact with the travelling Columba exhibition, where we took inspiration from the panels, the colours, the script styles, imagery to create these medieval inspired embroidery designs. This top image on the screen is me cleaning out a display case after emptying it, and then the middle image is me preparing pest traps to put in this case, as well as around the museum space and the storerooms. So here's a little overview of my highlights from my apprenticeship and into my new job at Campbeltown Museum. Now, I couldn't include all my highlights, this would be an impossible task, but here's just some days and events that stood out to me. So the top left hand corner is me in the archives in Legilpid for the very first time, and I was researching some objects from the museum that needed more up-to-date interpretation, and just to feed my curiosity at the beginning. Then we have the Wild Escapes event, which we held from April and May 2023. This was a national project created to raise awareness for and promote the tackling of climate change. We held schools visits and a family day with a quiz, bird nest making workshops, and of course some really good snacks. The next image is of Mount Stuart, which I visited in June 2023. We visited to view the Argyll Collection's new exhibition with Rossi Academy students who created this display. This is my first time visiting Mount Stuart, and I had never heard of this building before starting with charts, and it's fair to say it was an incredible day out, and I will definitely be back for a full tour of the building. On to the Travelling Columba exhibition, which was at Campbeltown Museum from June to October 2023. This is a photo of me setting up the exhibition panels in the Isle of Gaelic Centre, which sounds much easier than it is. This image at the top right is of my trip to Newcastle for the Museums Association conference, which was held in November. This was such a big deal for me in terms of getting out of my comfort zone and trying to balance the nerves while trying to take it all in and enjoy this experience. It was an interesting experience and made me realise just how large and diverse the heritage sector is and the variety of different aspects and themes involved, such as inclusion, representation, and just the different ways to interact with the community. Also educated me on just how many career paths are possible within this sector, and none are mentioned during school years. The last image on the screen here is me and Eleanor Claxon, Mayor from Kilmartin Museum, starting to empty archaeology cases to move the display cases back into the Central Museum. So for my last slide, I was asked to briefly talk about some objects that really caught my attention in the museum collection, as well as any underlying stories they might hold. So the first object we have is this bottom display of medals, which were awarded to Colonel Sir George Beatson of the Cancer Institute in Glasgow. This collection consists of British war medals, Medical Association badges, as well as the Officer's Cross of the Legion of France, and many more. Now, Beatson's family were from Campbeltown, and he too was raised here before he left for the city to study. He was a physician, a leading voice in the cancer fields, as well as serving in World War I, and pioneered the forming of the St Andrews Ambulance Service and the Scottish Red Cross. He was knighted twice, which I didn't think was entirely possible, but there you go. Next we have some paintings. So on the right hand side you'll see this painting of a lady, which is called When the Kye Comes Home by William McTaggart. This is a painting of an unknown lady in an unknown setting, so fair to say it really sparked my interest. The figure also blends into the background, and this was a common theme in McTaggart's work, to highlight the relationship between the land and the people being one, which is a very integral part of the Gaelic culture and Scottish farming life. Next we have the central image of the sea, which is called A Westerly Gale, also by William McTaggart. Although we just saw a portrait piece by him, he is considered to be the greatest painter of the sea to have ever lived. Now, McTaggart is also born and raised in Campbeltown and had an interest and great appreciation of the landscape and the sea. So he has a painting of a local bay called Macdoughanish, which, if you stand in the same place today, you will have the same view. The last painting on the screen is by another local man called Argyll McKinnon, and this piece is called A Campbeltown Fair. It's a really nice piece of art that gives an insight into how the town looked and functioned in around 1866 when it was painted. So really the main story I try to tell when dealing with school kids and people that visit the museum alike is that all these people I mentioned just before are from Campbeltown, and they went on to achieve great success in their fields. Among many other people such as James McAllister Hall, Sir William McKinnon and Duncan McEachran, many more. So my main message to people is that it doesn't matter where you're from, that if you come from a very rural, isolated place like Campbeltown, you can still venture out into the big wide world and achieve great things.
Fantastic. Thank you, Khara. Yeah, I really loved the context that you gave there. You know, you told me before that your journey from Campbeltown to that conference in Newcastle took over 9 hours. And I think that's something that's really important to bear in mind when we're talking about these opportunities for young people in Argyll and Bute, just how remote some of it is. And certainly with some of, just like the painting of the storm there, some of the weather we've been having. Like we were due to meet up in Campbeltown last week, but the snow got in the way. If it was this week, it would have been the wind. But fingers crossed, we will get our meetup eventually. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Khara about her work? Alison, over to you.
Hi, Khara, that was brilliant. Thank you very much. And really nice to hear what you're doing. I was in Calderwood Museum the other week, and they've got the MacDougall of the Sea, I think, hanging on the wall. I think, it's just so huge as well. It's quite amazing. You mentioned on the way through that there are all these careers available, and you didn't hear anything about them at school. And I just wondered if, a few years down the line, you can think of ways that we, people who work in heritage, which includes you now, I'm afraid, could all get that message back to people in school.
Yeah, well, through my skills outreach, I'm trying to make people aware of these opportunities and these careers. And when I was in school, it was more or less doctors, teachers, lawyers. Those were the main careers we were told about. And I think just informing the teachers that there are so many creative careers out there, because the teachers are where it all starts. They're the ones that are teaching the lessons. They're the ones that are planning the lessons and helping people apply for universities and courses. So I think it kind of starts with the school, the teachers.
Yeah, fantastic. And I should add as well that it might come across, that Khara in her assistant role is, part of a big team, but there is not a big team at Campbeltown Museum, and a lot of the events and things that Khara is putting on, she is doing single-handedly. So there is, the way you've just taken the opportunity and run with it is absolutely amazing. Good stuff. Okay, we will move on now to a presentation from Shannen, who I know will catch up with this on replay as well. So we wish you very much to get well soon, Shannen. And so Kirsten, over to you to play Shannen's presentation.
Hi there, my name is Shannen Calderwood. I hope you can all forgive me for not being there in person with you at this event. I am recovering from a bout of the flu, but I really did want to share what I've been up to this year. I've been undertaking an apprenticeship at Dunollie Museum, Castle and Grounds in Oban since January last year, 2023, completing an SVQ3 in Museums Galleries practice, supported by charts and funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund as part of the Argyll Aspires project. My qualification is supported by Museums Galleries Scotland. Though on paper based in collections care throughout my year here, I've actually inserted myself into everyone's business and tried to gain a little bit more of a well-rounded understanding of how a site like this runs as someone who has not worked in this sector before. So during my time here, I have spent time in places like our reception booth and also our kettle cafe. Sorry to anyone who visited and tried to buy a ticket or maybe a cappuccino from me, as you definitely would have gotten a latte with some chocolate on top. I've worked closely with all of my colleagues, as you do within a very small team, but I've been lucky enough to work closely with my colleague Jamie, who you see on the slide here, famous face around Dunollie and Oban itself. And I've been able to work with him to do things like deliver primary school workshops before the season began, and also to take Dunollie to things like Oban High School's career fair and also the Argyllshire Gathering. I learned to deliver Dunollie's guided tour, which has been absolutely incredible, as it's a really great way to meet visitors and to hear their stories of what it is that brings them to Dunollie. Quite often we have people who've travelled a very long way to come to Oban and to come to Dunollie, and getting to hear those stories of their MacDougall connections has been a really, really lovely part of the year. I've also worked closely with my colleague Florence to create a number of blog and social media posts on quite a varied range of topics connected to our site. Things like beekeeping at Dunollie, parts of our incredible historic textile collection, Dunollie's mystical rowan tree, and a whole host of famous MacDougall faces. So if anyone's looking for a good read tonight, feel free to head to our website and have a look at some of them. I was also lucky enough to work at Dunollie's first ever wedding, as that's what I did before I came here to Dunollie. It went so well, and it was so lovely to be part of what felt like the launch of a new element to Dunollie. So, as I say, dabbled in everything I could get into, really. That's not to say, though, that I don't feel passionate about collections care. In the time that I've been here, I've given my best efforts to bring in a bit of order to our collection storage and cataloguing spaces here. Like lots of improvised storerooms in Scottish museums, they are bursting at the seams with our incredible collections, but therefore a bit difficult to move in sometimes. I've tidied them both up, updated the information on some of our textiles, which were unchecked recently due to the pandemic, and have checked every single item in every single box in our social history stores. I've created some new documentation to go along with this that's a bit more in line with our current system, and also started transferring things like movement and location records into spaces which are more accessible for the rest of the team if they are using our collections. Throughout this time trying to understand the collections, what they each are, and how they came to be here, I really fell in love with the story of Miss Hope MacDougall. Dunollie houses two distinct collections. The clan or family collection is mainly comprised of historic textiles and Jacobean weaponry. We also care for the social history collection of Miss Hope MacDougall. She was daughter, sister, and aunt to our last three successive chiefs, and she devoted her life to her passion for Scottish social history. She amassed this incredible collection, which she initially displayed at her home in Gannavon, which is just outside, or it's part of Oban. When she passed away, it needed to find a new home. I would defy anybody to not be charmed by the story of one woman who, through this incredible passion for the social history of Scotland's Highlands and Islands, has inadvertently inspired the opening of a museum and heritage site, which celebrates not only her, but her incredible family, which has sat atop the cliff here at Dunollie for almost 1,000 years. Hope's collection is a comparative one and contains a wide range of objects on a huge number of topics. She had a keen interest in preserving the history of the working people of Scotland's Highlands and Islands, including fishing communities, farmers, travelling communities, and those involved in textile production. Her loom, which she bought for a tenner in the 1950s and was once used here at Dunollie before being dismantled, transported to and re-erected in Gannavon House, is one of the big ticket items in her collection. It's currently on display here at Dunollie. Her collection also boasts wonderful agricultural equipment from the islands, including a peat spade from Lewis and a sheep smearing bench from Khara. However, I found myself taken with not only these bold and impressive items, but small pieces of hope which bring to life the woman herself. Letters from her friends thanking her for the lovely Christmas cards she posted them, her handwritten inventory of her collection complete with pencil drawings of some of the items in the margins, notes she scribbled frantically on the back of envelopes to remind her of something that she wanted to research, piles of newspaper clippings about the death of I.F. Grant, who was Hope's mentor, but more importantly, her friend. This newspaper title that you can see here, All Honour to the Pioneer, Hope cut out another version of that and taped it to the front of this collection of newspaper cuttings, just the words, The Pioneer. Stories of Hope swimming at wee Gannavon every day, giving the postman a fright as she emerged from the beach early one morning, or of a young Hope sleeping on the roofs at Dunollie. Such was her desire to always be with nature. It's so easy to see the legend of someone, Hope MacDougall, woman historian, but she was also Hope MacDougall, friend, sister, daughter. And those are the parts with her which feel so special when I find them in her collections, in her archive boxes, or in the pages of her books. Social history is the story of people, their cultures and traditions, who they were and when, and to study the collections of Miss Hope MacDougall without searching for a sense of who else she was would surely be missing the point. So I just also want to address the learning element of my apprenticeship. Learning on the job has been relatively easy in terms of the modules making sense and being applicable to the work I'm doing here at Dunollie. I crack on with my day-to-day jobs here and get the kind of work done, and then MGS have made it really easy to evidence that by providing opportunities to upload work product or just have professional discussions about what I've been doing, what I know about the topic, and it's meant that it doesn't feel like I'm working and studying. The two combine really well and make a lot of sense alongside one another. It's also very flexible in that there were some core modules and then I could choose some that were most relevant to the work that I was going to be doing here at Dunollie. So, other than harping on about these things to anyone who will listen, especially Hope, what is next for me as my apprenticeship has drawn to a close. Today is exactly a year to the day since I started, so it's good timing. I'm pleased to say that I've been offered the opportunity to stay here at Dunollie for a wee bit longer. I've been offered the role of Collections Development Officer, working on a new project that we're just getting started called Sophie and White, the Dunollie Collections Unboxed. This 30-month project aims to audit, review and maximise the impact of our two collections here at Dunollie, so things that I'm really passionate about, and hopefully I can put that into the work and get some great results. I've had a fantastic year here at Dunollie. On a personal note, I moved to Oban from another town a couple of hours away. It's the first time I've ever moved away from home. Not only has Dunollie been a fantastic place to work, but I've made really excellent friends, hopefully for the long haul. Everyone has been part of my apprenticeship, from Kathleen, Sarah and Claire at Charts to Natalie and Karen at MGS, and anyone in between, has been friendly, supportive and passionate. I've had the year of my life. And I feel so lucky to have been given this opportunity and the chance to stay on as well. So a big thank you to everyone who's been involved. I hope that the Argyll Aspires project has inspired other organisations to take on apprentices, but I also really hope to see the Argyll Aspires project run again. And thank you so much for the chance to be involved. And I hope that this has been a good insight into what my year's been spent doing. If anyone's not been to visit us at Dunollie, please do come, because it's the most wonderful place. Sorry again to not be there, but thank you so much for listening.
Oh, that was just fantastic. And I'm sure you now have a little bit of a curiosity peaking to go and find out more about the amazing Hope. I certainly do. And if you do get a chance to visit Dunollie in the summer and you're lucky enough to get Shannen as a tour guide, she's amazing. She just enthuses you. And then you also get not only the story of Hope, you get to hear Shannen's absolute obsession with that loom. It just fills you with stories and wonder. And then you get the view. And I think, you know, Dunollie does win on views for heritage venues. It's stunning. So there we have it. We've gone archive to museum to castle, and we've also heard from a graduate. We've heard from someone who found the apprenticeship from just leaving school, and we heard there from Shannen, who had a previous career in hospitality and then moved into the heritage sector. So 3 really different routes that have all turned into jobs, which is amazing. So I'm going to put 3 prompts in the chat. I'll read them out as well, just to kind of give you thinking about what we're just going to have a discussion for 15 minutes max. And I'll just pop these prompts up now. So the first prompt is, what has this evening taught you about the heritage sector and opportunities for young heritage professionals? Here's a challenge, especially those of you involved in heritage. What else could heritage venues and project partners do to increase those opportunities? And what questions do you have for Khara, for Donald, or for Kathleen or myself about increasing access to careers in the heritage sector in Argyll? So, and broader too. So that's my kind of pitch to you. Who would like to say something?
Well, I would like to say that I felt quite teary listening to all that, and how inspiring it really was to hear all of your about all of your opportunities, and about how much you've grown and how much you have learned, and all the relationships that you have garnered throughout the project. So I would just want to say well done to all of you, and it would be lovely to think about how you might inspire people coming through school and perhaps coming onto their own career pathways who may have felt the same as you did, perhaps in the last 5 to 10 years. So not a question, but just a big heartfelt congratulations.
I've maybe got a question for you, Kirsty, actually, because you were involved in Heritage Horizons, the project that sort of happened before Argyll Aspires came about. And I can see, you know, I wasn't involved in that project, but I can see a leap to where we are now. What's the next leap? What would you like to see? If you had a magic wand, because Kathleen's good at finding funding for magic wands, what would you like to see happen next?
I would like to see I think Khara raised a very good point about the lack of awareness in perhaps career choices at schools. I would like to see us all try to build more awareness in that. And I would like to see more opportunities where people can stay in Argyll and find any type of work, but work in cultural sectors, because that's where all of our passion lies. And I think that we've now got 3 young people here who've been through that route, and we have Lily joining us tonight, who's on a 4-month traineeship with charts. And I would like us all perhaps to get our heads together and bang the drums and say, this is who we are, and this is what we can do, and this is what we can offer you.
Absolutely. And I think in that collective sense, you can be greater than the sum of your parts. I decided that the arts, most of my experiences in the arts, but also I do some heritage projects, but I felt the cultural sector wasn't represented at my son's high school in their careers evening. It was all like military and universities and STEM mostly around the room. So I set up my own little handmade stand with handmade signs representing the self-employed. I have to say the parents of Giffnock, ushered their children away from this rebellious pirate in the corner. But I think, if we could work together on things like that, so that at careers events and things, it's not just the same old, it's not just those big organizations that have got the budget to travel around to these places and give out free pens, that we could do something there. Absolutely. Has anybody else got, oh yes, thank you, Kathleen. You were just acknowledging Kirsty was also the co-author of the funding application to make this happen. So thank you, Kirsty. Thank you, Kathleen. Has anyone else got a question or thoughts? Alison, I can see you've unmuted.
Hi, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who took part this evening. I'm from Dunollie Preservation Trust. We're very, very grateful for all the help that you've given us for Shannen, and very, very delighted that she's staying on. Your second part is what else could heritage venues, your second prompt, project partners do. And I have to say, it does come down to finance. And that is one of the big things. If we would be delighted to offer lots of opportunities across the board in so many different sectors, because we've got a diverse range of interests at Dunollie, from the heritage sector, but also in retail and everything pertaining. So that is my only thing to say, is just unfortunately it comes down to the finance, because we're just after COVID, we're really literally on an uphill struggle. And in fact, I was very interested to see that Inveraray Castle has 80,000 visitors. That's amazing. We are topping 18, 19. So from our perspective for sustainability on a financial point of view, it's tough. But this is such an important area. We need to grow. And also, you're asking about how we get this out to young people. And all I can say is that perhaps that's something I'm going to take back and ask Shannen to go into the schools and to give a talk about a career in these sectors. And then you're getting it at the coal face, as it were, because I don't know who made the point earlier, but you're absolutely right. People don't get this opportunity in schools. I never was never even sort of on the horizon. And I know Donald was a very strong part of Dunollie, and I'm so pleased, Donald, that you've got your career pathed out for you there. So that's really all, just to give some sort of thoughts across the board. But thank you to everybody. It's been a brilliant evening, and and please come see Dunollie. It's fantastic, and Inveraray, which is equally fantastic. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Do a tour. Thank you, Alison. I'll hand over to Kathleen then. Oh, you have to come off mute though, Kathleen. Somebody had to do it.
If I can just follow up on that. Charts has increasingly worked with developing young workforce who have the responsibility for encouraging routes to employability with schools across Argyll and Bute. And this evening we were expecting someone to join us from the organisation who hasn't made it, unfortunately. But we will be following up on this. And I think in our final evaluation with the partners involved, Dunollie and everyone that you've seen here tonight, we will be looking at what we can do to build on this. And I would agree that working with these young professionals this evening and some of our team to develop opportunities where people can find out more about the range of professional opportunities in the arts and heritage fields should be a part of our key thinking for next year. And in relation to fundraising, again with partners, we can look at how we can work together to try and make some sense of what is a very challenging funding climate at the moment. That's what Charts is there for. So please don't hesitate to come forward with ideas or needs, and we will be exploring the next part of Argyll Aspires, because we do intend to develop this programme further, and we'll be doing that together. So thank you, and thank you, Kirsty McNabb. I was also very moved remembering the early days of writing that application together from what we've heard this evening. So thank you for your work, and thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Kathleen. I'm going to hand over to Jane, who's got her hand up.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Kathleen. I'm here tonight probably in my capacity as being just a member of the Friends of Argyll Papers, but I also chaired DYW Argyll and Bute. I'm not sure who from DYW you were maybe expecting tonight, and I was quite disappointed when I heard Khara saying that she's not. There's not so much encouragement for careers in archives. I'll certainly speak to the coordinators and to the Chief Operating Officer of DYW, but I know that in Oban a lot of work's been done between Dunollie and DYW. I would be surprised if it's not been done in our other schools, but I'll certainly make sure tomorrow that the message gets over that there is a career for young people in archives, and to speak to the various speakers from tonight's event.
Thank you. And also just to raise, and Kirsten Miller can put me right on this, but I think it was last year, we do take part in Creative Careers Week. And last year, Kirsten made a series of films about this apprenticeship scheme that was promoted with DYW. And it was Scott McKinnon who was going to come this evening. And we are in touch with the regional coordinators as well.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'll speak to Scott in the morning. I know that there's a big event in Heritage Academy this week, but I'll catch Scott tomorrow and make sure that he gets in touch with you. I think, Donald, you've maybe done work with DYW, Donald MacDougall, is that right?
I've been involved, as Kathleen was saying, with the video project that they did last year. So I've been involved with them in that capacity. But certainly I'm open to doing more with them. That would be great.
Yeah, no, that's good, because I know that they do a lot of work in Oban High School. So hopefully somebody will be in touch with you quite soon. Okay, thank you for that opportunity.
Fantastic. And as you've seen, Jane, today, that we've got Donald, Khara and Shannen are all brilliant speakers. So, spread the word on that front. And I'm sure that they'd be delighted that I'm offering you out as excellent speakers to speak elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a lot of careers events that they can participate in going forward.
Absolutely. Joyce, you had your physical hands up first, I think.
Sorry. I'm at a very low level of everything, but love it all. But I was just going to say that from various talks and today, I know that Donald and some of his colleagues, they're all pushing forward in the digital cataloguing, but they are very comfortable, because of their age group, very comfortable in the digital world now, which in schools and secondary schools, I feel they're a cutting edge of something that you could push forward into the educational world if you want to do it that way, but they are comfortable with it. So I think there'll be things will open out from what Donald and his friends do digitally. And also, and this is a very low level, when I was I was a primary teacher in Scotland and England, and at one point I was a history coordinator in a school. I was given a kit as well that was an archaeological kit that I could use with primary children. And we had artifacts and things, and they were hidden in things, and we had to go through a tunnel, but it was in a big box, and it just used to pass around the schools, and the teachers loved it because we're also exhausted trying to think of new lessons and things, you know. And it's like when rugby across the whole of England, they gave out little rugby kits, little packs to the teachers with simple little games, and every single school got one, and the whole place went mad down here. But it's just anything to catch youngsters' imaginations, and then be led by these young archivists, which I think they're really exciting. So anyway, that was all.
Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
Thank you. Janice, I think this might be our last question, and if anyone else has got anything burning, do let me know, but I'll hand over to you, Janice.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, no, I love that idea, and Sarah, you'll probably know as well from performing arts backgrounds, all those like, that really rang a bell with me, what Joyce was saying there about kind of ways in at a young age, sort of coming from performing arts background myself as well, and I used to do drama workshops connected to an archaeology project, and had wee tiny tots dressed as moles and digging up things, and the whole detective thing relating to archiving was another project from the past that really rang bells when Donald was speaking as well. And obviously it left something with me because I was thinking detective when you were talking about archives. So all these things are definite, and I'm certainly obviously like you know, the hat that I'm wearing at the moment through the week is with the third sector interface, and I'll stick my email in the chat. But my background is obviously in performing arts and kind of cultural work as well. So if there's anything that I can kind of help on or connect people up with in terms of ideas or ways of kind of putting some stuff together, let me know, because the reason that my hand was initially raised there was around the careers side of it. And I've got Dunollie Grammar School careers advice. I've been in touch with myself in my role as third sector support advisor to try and connect them to people within the third sector that might come and speak at some of these events that maybe aren't as easy to find. So again, if there's any kind of connecting work that I can do on behalf of organisations that might be useful, and I've got counterparts in Campbeltown and in Oban and also in Helensburgh as well. If there's ways that we can help to join some of the dots, because I totally related to what you were saying, Sarah, about describing things up in Giffnock, and also just almost like the kind of hero status that sometimes is put on things like finding a footballer or and that's all great and really healthy, you know, things for people to aspire to as well. But there are lots of young people who do want to stay and work here, but maybe don't know actually what their skill set plugs into. And again, a genius connection there Joyce is making around the kind of technical advance, you know, the digital kind of confidence that young people have got too. But I think hearing from any of the young people that spoke tonight would just be totally inspiring. I was sitting here going, oh, I quite fancy a career in archives, Donald, that sounds awesome. Like, so it's just like, do you know what I mean? So it's just like, if it's just so, I think when you hear from people and you can actually get that feel for it and hear the passion and everything that goes with it, you know, like Shannen mentioning completely moving to a new place and the excitement that goes with that for a young person. You know, moving 2 hours from where you live, well, it's not difficult in Argyll, as you said earlier, Sarah, to move quite a distance and feel like you're in a really new place and everything, all the excitement, challenges, but excitement that goes with that. And likewise as well, Khara talking about the inspiration of looking to the past to sort of see what can be achieved in a small and rural community. So I can't thank you enough for everything you've given tonight, and please let me know if there's any connecting I can do on anyone's behalf. I know how pushed the third sector is for time, so please let me know if I can be supportive. Thank you.
Thanks, Janice. That's fantastic. And I think that's a perfect note to end on as well. But yes, thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for your support. And I'm delighted that there is as much celebration as I feel in just how blooming wonderful these people are, and what brilliant presentations, such diverse and fascinating, curiosity-piquing presentations you've given us. I can't wait to see how your careers will evolve. But yes, Kathleen, did you have any last words before we round up?
Really, what hasn't been said, I think Eleanor McKinnon's comment about what great young ambassadors for Argyll, we couldn't say that any louder. And sincerely, good luck everyone on your journey. And also to point out that to the group talking tonight and presenting tonight, another lovely thing is they're very well connected to the end of Argyll Aspires phase 1, as we're now calling it, which ends in April. And I'm sure there'll be other lovely projects emerging between them in the future. So thank you, everyone. And thank you for coming. Thank you.